I just saw the new movie HYPNOTIC. Is it any good? How many butter pumps will it get? Let's find out.
My baby likes butter pop.
Hello, my beautiful butter babies. So let's get into the new Ben Affleck movie HYPNOTIC. Going into this movie, I really didn't have high expectations. There was little to no promotion for the film, and the trailer looked very mid. Plus, its premiere was sandwiched in between two tentpole movies, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3's second weekend and this coming weekend's Fast X. So clearly, the studio that released this movie didn't really have a lot of faith in it. With it debuting in 6th place with a paltry $2.4 million domestic with no guarantee of an international release, moviegoers didn't have much faith in it either. So what went wrong? Well, as I said in my fresh out of the theater reaction, link somewhere up here, part of the problem is it plays like an outline of a movie, where you're hitting bullet point after bullet point in quick succession, but never taking any time to fully flesh out any of the points you're making. This movie moves quick. From start to finish, including a mid-credits scene, it's all of 92 minutes long. There's a lot of plot, conflicts, twists and turns and resolutions to shove into that 92-minute runtime. And while not every film has to be a 3-hour opus, this film could have really benefited from a longer runtime, if for no other reason than to allow the movie to breathe. The second problem with the film is it breaks one of the cardinal rules of storytelling, especially when it comes to screenwriting, which is show, don't tell. Turns out this movie is a talkie. You wouldn't think so with the lightning fast runtime and all of the action sequences that abound in this movie, but it really is a talkie. There is so much exposition in this film. Huge chunks of the movie's plot is given in speeches and monologues. Just minutes upon minutes of exposition where there could have been scenes where people, acted in them instead of monologued their way through. I wanted to see what they were talking about rather than listen to them drone on and on about it. And the other thing was, every time someone stopped to explain what was going on, instead of showing what was going on, it actually slowed the momentum of the movie down. This is one of those movies that would have worked so much better as a streaming series. The premise of the movie is solid. What if the government had taken its alleged studying of telekinetic and psychic abilities back in the mid-20th century a step further and created super soldiers? What if those people, they called them hypnotics in this movie, were trained by the US government and put into positions of power all around the world? Agents who can influence governments or twist reality to make political leaders see things that weren't really there, or start or end wars, or build up or destroy economies simply by mind controlling the people in power. Just that alone would make a fantastic premise to a TV show. The espionage and intrigue and hypnotic spy versus hypnotic spy action would be some edge-of-your-seat television watching. Then, what if two hypnotics fell in love and got married? And then what if they had a kid who turned out to be the most powerful hypnotic ever? And then what if the government wanted to turn that kid into a weapon and the parents went on the run with their child? That would make for a fantastic fantastic final season of this hypothetical hypnotic show. I don't know if Robert Rodriguez, who wrote and directed this film, by the way, ever pitched it as a show, but if not, he really should have. All of the plot points that I mentioned that were breezed through or monologued through or both would have had plenty of time to breathe and get fleshed out if they had multiple 10-hour streaming seasons to work through instead of 1 hour-and-a-half movie. Ben Affleck is a solid actor. When he cares about a project he's acting in, he really gives it his all. With this movie, he literally phones in his entire performance. It felt like he was giving the bare minimum when it came to the character he was playing. He said a few times here recently he's almost done with acting and wants to spend a lot more time behind the camera. And I agree with that. Ben Affleck from here on out should focus on directing only and should only sign on for an acting gig if he's passionate about the role, because it was clear from the very first frame he just was not into this movie at all. As for the rest of the cast, Jeff Fahey, one of my favorite actors, has a cameo in the finale of the film that completely wasted him. Anyone could have stepped into that role and, a couple days work, he gets a check, but he was wasted in that role, and I'm glad that he got his check out of it. Speaking of, William Fichtner, who runs this government division of Hypnotics, is a character I would have liked to have seen more of, and definitely more fleshed out. Again, TV series. He's just okay in this role, and that's only because there's just not enough in the script to make him anything more than a two-dimensional character. And that's a shame because I really do enjoy William Fichtner. Honestly, the rest of the cast made little to no impression on me at all. They were there, they did the job, they probably went home afterward and had a sandwich. And that was it. Part of the premise I mentioned earlier that would make a great TV show actually plays out in the movie. There is a government division called The Division that's focused on developing psychic and telekinetic powers in its agents. They do have the agents that they call hypnotics that have been placed in positions of power all around the globe to influence world events. 2 of them actually do fall in love, get married, and have a kid who becomes the most powerful hypnotic of them all. What you find out in the 3rd act is the parents do indeed hide their kid, so the division doesn't turn her into a weapon. But in order to protect her, they wipe their minds clean so they don't remember where they hid her. Through twists and turns, we figure out the father has been kidnapped by the division and has been put through a simulation that tries to get him to remember where he hid his daughter. The wife, whose mind has also been wiped, is working with the division to get him to reveal their daughter's whereabouts. They've run this very involved and very complicated simulation 12 different times. And each time, right before he reveals where his daughter is, he figures out he's in a simulation and they have to wipe his mind again and start the simulation over. But this last time is different. For reasons that are never really explained, his mind doesn't wipe and he actually escapes the division headquarters. He drives directly to where he's hidden his daughter for the past 3 years and inadvertently leads the division right to her as well. Why she had to stay hidden for 3 years in order to be powerful enough to take on the entire division is never explained. 3 years prior, when she was like a preteen, she was forcing swaths of agents to do things they didn't want to. So why would 3 years on make a difference? Never explained. Anyway, when the division shows up, the daughter makes quick business of them all by forcing them all to kill each other, which they do just like that. All but her mother, who is awakened by her daughter's powers and remembers what they did to protect her 3 years prior. The happily reunited family hops in a helicopter and leaves. The end. The mid-credit scene shows that the leader of the division, who was forced by the daughter to kill himself in the division murder melee, actually made it so everyone thought he was dead. He basically made them see what he wanted them to see. As the helicopter speeds away, he steps into frame, grabs a gun, and walks away, which only added to the confusion of this movie. If the leader of the division, who, by the way, truly seemed to have godlike powers throughout the entire movie, as he forced people to do what he wanted them to do and made them see what he wanted them to see, if he was that powerful, why didn't he just take down the little girl all by himself? Clearly he was strong enough to make everyone think he died in a melee with all the division agents killing each other. So why couldn't he have taken out the family all by himself and kidnapped the daughter back to the division all by himself? Why did he let them get away? Why didn't he make the helicopter just another simulation? He was at least one step ahead of everyone the entire movie until it actually counted. Now, it could be argued he was one step ahead because he was acting in the simulation. But if at the end he convinced them he was dead, but he wasn't, it seems to me that he could have convinced them of other things as well. As I said, throughout this entire film, it seemed as if the leader of the division had God-like powers. He was always one step ahead, always knowing where Ben Affleck and Alice Braga, the mother and father in this movie, were going next and what they were going to do next. And twists and turns happen, and he's always there waiting for them. And it just seemed like if he had all of these godlike powers within the simulation and he convinced them that he was dead outside of the simulation, then he should have been strong enough to take the family out and kidnap the daughter. But anyway, this is not the only plot hole in the movie, but it is certainly the most egregious. There are plenty more when that came from. For instance, how did the parents wipe each other's minds without the division knowing about it? How did Ben Affleck avoid the mind wipe that final time? Why did it take 3 years for their daughter to get strong enough to take the division down? Were Ben Affleck and Alice Braga the only hypnotics in the division besides their godlike leader? Because no one else even attempted to use their hypnotic powers on the family, and that division was crawling with agents. And as for the division, I get why they wanted to protect their investment, but again, it seems ridiculous. They wouldn't have turned part of the division into a breeding ground to produce more hypnotics. That there was only one child ever born to a hypnotic couple makes zero sense. Remember, this division has been around since the mid-20th century. Are you telling me that in the decades upon decades since the mid-20th century, only 2 hypnotics ever fell in love with each other and only 1 hypnotic child was ever born? Doesn't make sense. Those and so many more lingering questions are raised and unfortunately never answered in this movie. So finally, how many butter pumps am I going to give to Hypnotic? 2. That's right, 2 butter pumps, only because the action sequences in this movie are really good. In some places, it's like watching Inception on a budget. All of it is shot in a way that pulls you in and keeps you on the edge of your seat and engaged in all of the action. Robert Rodriguez, who, regardless of this movie, is still one of my favorite directors, is honestly a hit or miss kind of a director. Lately, his movies have been more miss than hit, and unfortunately, you can add Hypnotic to the miss pile. Wait to watch this on streaming. So now I turn it over to you, my beautiful butter babies. Did you watch Hypnotic? If so, what did you think? How many butter pumps would you give it? Sound off down below in the comments. I want to hear all about it. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing, my butter babies. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.